Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Tonight's lesson is on Al-Lu'lu' Marjan Fima Ittafaqa alayhi Shaykhan. Khairan, inshallah, we've reached chapter number 14 in Kitab al-Siyam, the book of fasting. Chapter 14 says, Babu tahrimi aw taghlidi tahrim al-jima'i fi nahari Ramadan ala as-sa'im. ووجوب الكفارة الكبرى فيه وأنها تجب على الموسر والمعسر وتثبت في ذمة المعسر حتى يستطيع. Chapter 14 says, it is absolutely forbidden to have sexual relation during the day in Ramadan for a person observing fast. And it is obligatory on him to pay the great penalty of its expiation. And it is an obligation on both rich and poor. And it will be a binding on the neck of the poor till he pays it. The chapter talks about, it says, تغليظ tahrim, that it is muharram tahriman mughalladan, is that the impermissibility of this act is not something which is slightly impermissible or maybe disliked, just a sin. It is from the kaba'ir. It's a major sin, and it's a major sin that requires an expiation and an act of atonement. So a major sin for one who's fasting. The chapter heading does not say in the daytime, and that obviously excludes someone who's sick. That excludes someone who's traveling. That may exclude a mujahid. That may exclude someone who broke his or her fast to save someone drowning and they were extremely exhausted afterwards and they had to eat and drink, or they had to give blood for someone dying, etc. Even though the scholars of Islam, or at least some of them, have different views and details with regards to those people. I traveled and I came back to my residence, my home, before Maghrib. Can I continue to eat and drink? So, an example of this, my wife is breastfeeding. She's not fasting. I just came back from traveling. It's an hour before iftar or 2 hours before iftar. I broke my fast permissibly. Now I'm back home. Do I have to keep fasting to the rest of the day? My wife isn't fasting, or can I have intimate relations with my wife? So it's in Ramadan, and it's also the daytime, but neither of us are fasting. So is it still impermissible or not? The scholars, they have different views with regards to that issue. The point I'm trying to make is that which ma yakhruju bihadha tabweeb, that which is excluded from this chapter heading. It clearly states and it clearly stipulates in the daytime for those who are fasting. طيب, khairan inshallah. And the question is, how could someone not be fasting in the daytime of Ramadan? And we have just explained that and proven that. Many instances in which a man and or woman could not be fasting in the daytime of Ramadan. طيب. Secondly, is that it must be wiped away, not just with tawbah or istighfar, but there has to be a kafara. And it says al-kafaratul kubra, a major expiation, a heavy penalty, heavy financial penalty. All right. Then it says وَأَنْهَا تَجْبُ عَلَى الْمُوسِرِ وَالْمُعْسِرِ, rich and poor. It's not just for the rich, and if the poor person can't afford it, then he has to pay as well. And if he is mu'sir, if it's difficult and his wealth is constrained upon him, then it is a debt on him until he finds it. Khayr, inshallah. So one of the rulings of the month of Ramadan is that it is impermissible to violate your fast. It is impermissible to break your fast any manner, food, drink, especially with sexual intercourse. And the one who does it has to pay. The one who does it has to pay. They have sinned, they have disobeyed the rules, and they have angered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Khayr, inshallah. The question is now, why doesn't it mention in the chapter heading that the one who does this is only held responsible if he forgets? If he or she forgets. It doesn't necessarily mention that, and we'll come across that in the sharh. طيب, Hadith 678. تفضل.
حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال إن الأجر وقع على امرأته في رمضان. إن الأخيرة وقع على امرأته في رمضان.
هكذا إن الأخيرة. فضل.
وقع على امرأته في رمضان فقال أتجد ما تحرر رقبة؟ قال لا. قال فتستطيع أن تصوم شهرين متتابعين؟ قال لا. قال أفتجد ما تطعم به 60 مسكينا؟ قال لا. قال فأتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بأرق فيه تمر وهو الزبيل قال أطعم هذا عنك. قال ألا أحوج منا ما بين لا بتيها أهل بيت أحوج منا. قال فأطعمه أهلك. حديث عائشة قالت أتى رجل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في المسجد فقال احترقت. قال مما ذاك؟ قال وقعت بامرأتي في رمضان. قال له تصدق. فقال ما عندي شيء. فجلس وأتاه إنسان يسوق همارا ومعه طعام. قال عبد الرحمن أحد رواة الحديث ما أدري ما هو إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أين المحترق؟ فقال ها أنا ذا. قال خذ هذا فتصدق به. قال على أحوج مني ما لأهلي طعام. قال فكلوه.
طيب, Jazakallah khairan. Hadith 678 is narrated by Abu Hurairah. It says, Inna al-akhirah. Allahu alam, the dabt of that. Inna al-akhirah, or al-akhirah, Allahu alam. It says, a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, I had sexual intercourse with my wife in Ramadan. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, can you afford to manumit a slave? He replied in the negative. The Prophet ﷺ asked him, can you observe Psalm for 2 successful months? He replied in the negative. He asked him, can you afford to feed 60 poor persons? He replied in the negative. Then a basket full of dates was brought to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said to the man, feed with this on your behalf. He said, to poorer people than we, there's no poorer house than ours between its mountains. The Prophet ﷺ said, then feed your family with it. Hadith 679 is narrated by Aisha radhiyallahu anha. A man came to the Prophet ﷺ in the mosque and said, I'm burnt. The Prophet asked ﷺ, with what? He said, I have had sexual relation with my wife in the month of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, give in charity. He said, I have nothing. The man sat down. And in the meantime, there came a person driving a donkey carrying food to the Prophet ﷺ. On that, the Prophet ﷺ asked, where is this burnt person? The man said, here I am. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, take this and give it in charity. The man said, to a poor person than I, my family has nothing to eat. Then the Prophet ﷺ said to him, then eat it yourselves. So both of these authentic hadiths in Bukhari and Muslim, they show us and they teach us as that the man came, whether it's two different stories or one story, two narrations, claiming destruction, ruin. He was damned. Okay? He made a major mistake. He was burnt. Ihtaraqtu. He acknowledged that it was impermissible and it was haram, and that he already knew that it was impermissible and it was a major means of destruction. That it was already taught and explained by the Prophet to the people. And in most cases, a man like this wasn't a man of great knowledge. In most cases, it was one of the Sahaba that was close to the Prophet every day. Not necessarily a Bedouin, but someone that may have been a little off. In most cases. So to prove that this teaching was what? Was widespread. So the shahid wa munasaba bain al-hadithi wal bab is that the man confessed to being burnt and to being ruined and to be in trouble. And the Prophet commanded him to make the expiation, proving the two main things of the chapter heading. One is that it's a major sin, it's impermissible. And two is that it requires a kafara. So that's the connection between the chapter heading and the hadith. And of course, the munasaba, the connection between the chapter heading and the kitab. The bab and the kitab. Kitab was Sawm, and from the rulings of Sawm is a person having intercourse in the daytime So all three have to line up. Everyone understand this? All three have to what? Line up when we talk about the proper systematic fiqh sunnah and fiqh al-hadith. Kitab al-Tawheed. Bab ma ja'a kada, the chapter of such and such, and then the hadith. So the bab has to fit in the kitab, and the hadith has to fit with the bab. Once you can do that every single chapter systematically, you start turning your mind to a machine. And you have a systematic approach to the hadiths, and you properly understand and inshallah properly use them and properly propagate those hadiths. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. Alright, so that's the main lesson from both of those authentic hadith. There are countless benefits in those hadiths. And before we take our own benefits, let's go and move forward to what An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala says regarding these hadith and with regards to this chapter. Khairan inshallah. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says here, في الباب حديث أبي هريرة في المجامع امرأته في نهار رمضان ومذهبنا ومذهب العلماء كافة وجوب الكفارة عليه إذا جامع عامدا جماعا أفسد به صوم يوم من رمضان والكفارة عتق رقبة مؤمنة سليمة من العيوب التي تضر بالعمل إضرارا بناء أو بينا فإن عجز عنها فصوم شهرين متتابعين فإن عجز فإطعام 60 مسكينا كل مسكين مد من طعام ورطل وثلث بالبغداد فإن عجز عن الخصال الثلاث فللشافعي قولان. No, he says here, the chapter that we just read, and you have the hadith of Abu Hurairah about a man who had sex with his wife in the daytime of Ramadan. He says, our madhab, meaning the Shafi'i school, and the majority of the ulama, the overwhelming majority, is that the expiation is mandatory. The expiation is mandatory for one who intentionally has sexual intercourse. And the sexual intercourse which ruins a day of Ramadan. So, no, we said amidan, excluding one who did it out of forgetfulness, a mistake. How is it possible for a man to have sexual intercourse with his wife in Ramadan by mistake or forgetfulness? The scholars, they differ on that. Some say it's mumkin. If a person can forget about a prayer, he can forget about something else. And others say it's ghayru mumkin, impossible. A person may touch his wife, a wife may touch her husband, so on and so forth, but to go all the way, they say it's impossible for it not to pop into your head that it's in the month of Ramadan in the daytime. So the scholars, they differ on that. An-Nawawi, he clearly stipulated, he said what? Amidan, intentionally, excluding one who did it unintentionally. Tayyib. Then he says, Jima'an afsada bihi. Jima', intercourse, which ruins the day. And of course, the word intercourse, sexual relations, has a connotation in the English language and in the Arabic language. And of course, it can be used in other instances as well. In other what? Instances as well. Khairan inshallah. Moving forward, he says, and the kafara, the expiation, is itqu raqabatin mu'minatin, is the manumitting of a believing slave. The slave cannot be a non-believer. Has to be a Muslim, a mu'mina. Has to be a mu'mina, a believing slave. This also shows us here is that slavery and manumission are a part of the Islamic legislature. And once that is removed from the Islamic legislature, for one reason or another, there are other rulings which are also going to be removed. That's just how it goes. This is no longer, this is abolished, this, okay? Then there are other things that what? Are as well, all right? Allahumma musta'an. Tayyib. And this slave has to be salima min al-uyub. It can't be a slave that's sick or old and dying or diseased. It has to be a slave that has the ability to give some benefit in its work. To give some benefit in its what? In its work. Tayyib. If a person cannot manumit a slave, a believing slave, in that description, then they must fast 2 consecutive months, back to back. Not with a day off, not with a break, at least 58 days, right? Khairan inshallah. Moving forward, if a person can't do that for one reason or another, extreme health conditions or whatever the case may be, then they must feed 60 people. And every poor person has to have a mud. A mud, meaning 2 handfuls or hand scoops And then the Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala goes on to say how much this is exactly the weight of this in the old times. Bil Baghdadi, the Baghdadi measurement, where the Caliph was, the Khulafa, the standardized currency of the Muslims, the measurements, the weights of the Muslims, the metric system of that time. Nah? Moving forward. So therefore, now, what if a person can't do, I can't do any of this now. There's no slaves to free. I can't fast 2 months in a row because I have diabetes, dialysis, or whatever the case may be. Nor do I have the money to feed 60 people. Now, what do you do? No way he quotes what the Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala says regarding this. أحدهما لا شيء عليه وإن استطاع بعد ذلك فلا شيء عليه. واحتج لهذا القول بأن حديث هذا المنجم ظاهر بأنه لم يستقر في ذمته شيء لأنه أخبر بعجزه ولم يقل له رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كفارة ثابت في ذمته بل أذن له في إطعام عياله. The first opinion of Imam Shafi'i is that there is nothing upon him. If he can't do one of the three, he can't do none of the three, then there's what? لا شيء عليه. There's nothing upon him. Even if he becomes able later on. Period. He's now permanently, perpetually exempt from this expiation. The proof was for this opinion was the hadith itself. And that once the man told the Prophet ﷺ that there was no one poorer than him, he couldn't afford it, he couldn't do it, the Prophet didn't say, well, wait. The Prophet didn't say, well, it's still upon you. All right? Now, and obviously, this is usage of the what? The Zahir. How many other issues where the Zahir proved something? The Prophet did not ask. The Prophet did not say it can't have a rip in the sock. The Prophet did not say. The Prophet, and then they say, and they come along and they what? And the fuqaha in the schools, they say, well, no, it can't be this. And if the rip in the sock, it can't be no longer than that. It has to be above the ankle, kada. Everyone understand this? And it goes to show, what we said many times before, is that if you do not make the asl, the default, the zahir, and you take it when you want and when you don't want to without a proof. We're not going against the zahir with a what? A dalil. It's a clear proof that we can't just take the zahir here. There's another indicator. There's a qarina. Another hadith is ijma. Abdullah ibn Abbas, the narrator himself, said such and such. But if that's not the case, then we stick with the what? With the zahir. And we can't just jump in and out how we want to, right? Everyone understand this? So the hadith does not stipulate that the Prophet what? Said, wait until you... He said, no issue, then the dates came. So you see here, is they clearly took the what? Jiddan. Word for word, the zahir. Moving forward. He says, rather the Prophet ﷺ allowed him to feed his family with the box of dates. وَالْقَوْلُ الثَّانِي وَهُوَ الصَّحِيحُ عِنْدَ أَصْحَابِنَا. And the second view of Shafi'i, which the Shafi'is adopted, they didn't adopt the first one. وَهُوَ الْمُخْتَارُ. That's the selective view. أَنَّ الْكَفَارَةَ لَا تَسْقُطْ بَلْ تَسْتَقِرُّ فِي ذِمَّتِهِ حِينَ يَتَمَكَّنَ قِيَاسًا عَلَى سَائِرِ الدِّيُونِ وَالْحُقُوقِ وَالْمُؤَاخَذَاتِ كَجَزَاءِ الصَّيْدِ وَغَيْرِهِ. Is that he has a debt over him. Just like any other debt, any other type of violation, hunting, while you're in ihram, or any other hajj debt, or any debt that a person has. A dayn and a haqq that is on his neck, that is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he has to pay, and it is upon him until he has the ability to do it. وأما حديث فليس فيه نفي استقرار الكفارة بل فيه دليل استقرارها لأنه أخبر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه عاجز عن الخصال الثلاث ثم أتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعرق تمر فأمره بإخراجه في الكفارة فلو كانت تسقط بالعجز لم يكن عليه شيء ولم يأمره بإخراجه فدل على ثبوت في ذمته وإنما أذن له في طعام عياله لأنه كان محتاجا ومضطرا إلى إنفاقه على عياله في الحال والكفارة على التراخي فأذن له في أكله وطعام عياله وباقيت الكفارة في ذمته وإنما لم يبين بقاء في ذمته لأن تأخير البيان إلى وقت الحج جائز عند جماهير الأصوليين وهذا هو الصواب في معنى الحديث وحكم المسألة في أقوال وتأويلات أخر ضعيفة. Then he goes on to prove why the second view is strongest. The Prophet ﷺ could have delayed its obligatory clarification. See the weakness in that view. Let alone the fact that if Imam Shafi'i held the first view, then that proves that Shafi'i, his deduction was wrong and it was incorrect. So it's still some type of blame is falling on the Imam for him to have even thought and not take the second one. Whether he retracted it, whether he made the second one al-madhhab al-jadid, or whatever the case may be. Moving forward, he says here that the Prophet ﷺ, he says this hadith proves that the debt still remained. All right? And that is because he told the Prophet that he was poor. He couldn't do one of the three things. He couldn't do none of them. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he was given the box of dates, and he told the man to give the dates as the kafara. And if it was saqat, yani, if he was exempt from it, then the Prophet wouldn't have told him that until he told the Prophet ﷺ that he was poor. I don't know if it's khilaf. If you have the ability to do it, then what? You should do it. Moving forward. وأما المجامع ناسيا فلا يفطر ولا كفارة عليه هذا هو صحيح من مذهبنا وبه قال جمهور العلماء ولأصحاب مالك خلاف في وجوبها عليه وقال أحمد يفطر أو يفطر وتجب فيه الكفارة. And he says there are other views and opinions about that hadith as well. طيب. As far as the one who has intercourse out of forgetfulness, then the correct view to us and the view of most of the scholars is that it does not break the fast, and there's no expiation what? On him. Proving that a person could have intercourse out of, according to those scholars. As far as some of the disciples of Imam Malik, then they differed over that. Imam Ahmad, he held the view that it breaks the fast, and it does what? Kafara. And there's a kafara. So Imam Ahmad here is his view, according to what Nawawi says, goes against the majority of the ulama, of the scholars. Everyone understand this? He said Jamahir. He says most of the what? Well, he says Jumhur al-ulama. Then he mentioned some disciples of Malik about the wujub of the kafara, and Imam Ahmad said what? Both. It breaks the fast and it requires a kafara. And it requires a kafara. طيب. وقال عطاء وربيعة والأوزاعي والليث والثوري يجب القضاء ولا كفارة. As far as some of the Salaf, such as Ata and Rabi'a and Awza'i, Layth, Thawri, these are Imams during the time of Imam Ahmad, or before Imam Ahmad, excuse me. These from the Tabi'een and Atba' Tabi'een. Ata bin Abi Rabah, Rabi'at al-Ra'i, a colleague, a contemporary of Malik, Al-Awza'i, contemporary, etc. They held the view is that a person must make up the day, meaning that it did what? It broke the fast, but there is no kafara. Ahmed said what? Both. And they have the view only? Only one. دليلنا أن الحديث صح أن أكل الناس لا يفطر والجماع في معناه. No, he says our proof, our evidence is that if you eat forgetfully, then there's no break-in, there's no kafara. And the same applies to? So they make qiyas. They make what? They make qiyas. You agree with that?
Yes.
What you think?